Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Salas, and I hope this video finds you all doing as well as can be expected during this time. This video is going to concentrate on the readings that we had for week 13. We're looking at concept 2, writing speaks to situations through recognizable forms, as well as concept number 3, writing enacts and creates identities and ideologies. So most of the video today is going to concentrate on concept number 2. We're going to go over the concept of situation and genres. And I'll briefly discuss a few things from concept number 3, but based on the discussions post, most of the questions came from concept number 2, so that's where I'm going to be focusing my most of the time in this video. As a quick update, you all are continuing to do really well on your discussions post. I'm seeing a lot of a continued lively discussion on these concepts. I just want to remind you all that for next week and going forward for the next few weeks in the semester, if you have questions on the readings, be sure to include those in the discussions post. That's helpful for me to be able to kind of see where you all are, what things are confusing or need to be explained a little bit more, and then that way I can incorporate them into my weekly videos. As a final update, if you have any other questions that I'm not addressing within my weekly recap videos, please feel free to send me an email, set up office hours, set up an appointment, let's talk. I'd be happy to talk through some of the readings and some of the questions that you might have. Just kind of reach out and let me know what works for you. Again, I'm having office hours via WebEx, and just by appointment, send me an email and we'll set something up. So with those final few announcements, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and start with concept number 2, writing speaks to situations through recognizable forms. So here within this piece, we are introduced to a few different concepts. But the first one that we are introduced to is a concept called a situation. So situations, and this is something similar that we discussed earlier in the semester when we talked about rhetoric. We think about rhetorical situations. And here, rhetorical situations are applicable to the situations that we find ourselves in when we're composing, we're writing something. So identifying the situation we are in and the nature of the communication we wish to make is identifying the situation. And awareness of rhetorical situation is the beginning of reflection on how we perceive the situation. What more can we understand about it, how we can formulate our goals, and what strategies we may need to take in our utterances. What's going to be the most effective way to engage in that situation? So after situations, we are introduced with this concept of genre. And I saw a lot of questions kind of floating of like, what exactly is a genre? What exactly does genre mean? So in my notes that I'm going to be sharing with you all, I have a few slides dedicated to what is genre, but I'm going to go over and touch on a few of those here for this video. So here, let's start. It is through genre that we recognize the kinds of messages a document may contain, the kind of situation it is part of and it might migrate to, and the kinds of roles and relations of writers and readers, and the kinds of actions realized in the document. Genre recognition provides a necessary clue for locating and making sense of any piece of paper or any digital display that comes before our eyes. A further troublesome corollary is that we can share with each other through writing. What we can share through each other is limited by our ability to represent the world through language and the ability of our readers to make sense of our representation in ways congruent to our intentions. So here, when we get into what is a genre, what is it? It's a form of discourse recognizable as a common set of structural or thematic qualities. It's the visible effects of human actions, routinized to the point of habit in specific cultural conditions. Genres are habitual responses to recurring socially bounded situations. And these 3 definitions come from the text that you all read for this week. And I noticed that there were some questions kind of circulating, but what is this? So I want to use an example of an email. An email is kind of a simplistic kind of genre to get us thinking about this. So when we think about the genre of an email, we think about, and this is a word that we used earlier in the semester, we think about their conventions. What are the rules of the email? So something that you might have is you have a salutation, you have a message, you have your closing, where you kind of like say, dear whomever, you have your message, and then you have your closing. Also in emails, you might have something maybe a little bit more condensed and short to the point. But that's not the rules of every email. the rules of every email are going to be highly dependent upon the situation in which you find yourself in needing to compose an email. So the genre can be the email, but the genre is highly regulated by the audience and the purpose of which you are composing that email. So genres, we can call them, and some have called them as stabilized for now. They are stabilized for one specific situation. And here I'm bringing in other readings that we didn't get to for this class, but this is Miller's Genre as Social Action from 1984, and these are a few quotes from her piece. Genre refers to a conventional category of discourse based in large-scale typification of rhetorical action. As action, it requires meaning from situation and from the social context in which that situation arose. So again, something happens. You need to respond to something in an email. We kind of have this kind of general idea of what an email is, what the category of an email is. But what that email will look like is highly dependent upon the rhetorical action it needs to serve, as well as the situation it's within. As meaningful action, genre is interpretable by means of rules. Genre rules occur at a relatively high level on a hierarchy of rules for symbolic interaction. And this is key. Genre is distinct from form. Form is the more general term used at all levels of the hierarchy. Genre is a form at one particular level that is a fusion of lower level forms and characteristic substances. So again, genres can be emails. Emails can be genres, right? But what makes an email appropriate for its use in the moment is going to be dictated by the situation, who that email is for, what that audience is, what the purpose is. And those are going to be the rules of genre in that situation. So genres are stabilized for a moment, but they are only within that situation that they are able to have meaning. Again, we can have emails. When we think of emails, we think of different audiences. We kind of think of generalizable rules. But what the genre of an email is again specific to that specific audience and moment. So this is another article. That we didn't read for class, but has some good information to help us kind of continue to think through genres. So genres are both functional and epistemological. They help us function within particular situations. At the same time, they help shape the ways we come to know these situations. We perform an activity in terms of how we recognize it, that is, how we identify and come to know it, and we recognize an activity by way of genre. Genre helps shape and enable our social actions by rhetorically constituting the way we recognize the situations with which we function. So this is a little bit more of a meta way of thinking about genre. So when we think about genre, genres are both at one level the form, but just at one level. At a more hierarchical level, genres are also the specific ways that we are going to be responding to a situation, such as that email to that specific audience for that specific purpose, which might take a different shape if it has a different audience and different purpose. But genres are also ways of thinking about how do we interpret the information. When we interact with certain genres, we're already kind of shaped by our previous experiences of how to understand the information that we're receiving. So again, here, let's think about this in terms of another genre. So a tweet, and we think about a tweet. If we receive information via a tweet, because of its generic function, because of it being presented to us as a tweet, we are already going to have some kind of a parameter of how we are going to interpret the information that we're receiving because it is being presented as a tweet. So in one level, it's both from our perspective as writers, how are we going to present information? But the other side of it is that the genre in which information is being presented to us as an audience member will help shape how we are interpreting that information as well. So again, this is kind of that dual lens. Genres are enacted by writers and readers, and we can be both at the same time, or we can be both in different situations. So regularities of textual form most lay people experience as the structural characteristics of genres emerge from these repeated instances of action and are reinforced by institutional power. Genres are constructions of groups. Over time, usually with the implicit or explicit sanction of organizational or institutional power. One that is no single text is a genre. It can only be an instance of that genre as it enters into context activity systems where it might be taken up as such an instance. So again, genres are dictated by the rules of the community in which it's being used. And the rules and the community is what creates the rules of communication for that genre. So if the community decided that they're going to construct emails in this way, then it would change the function of the genre in that community. If one person just kind of goes out and tries to do it, it might not work. It has to take the consensus of the community. But it's both the community as well as the person who's writing as a whole. All of those functions can play a role in enacting what a genre is. All right, I'm going to skip through this. You can all read this later, but I wanted to stop on this. As such, genres are not merely classification systems or innocent communicative tools. Genres are socially constructed, cognitive, and rhetorical concepts, symbiotically maintained rhetorical ecosystems, if you will, within which communicants enact and reproduce specific situations, actions, relations, and identities. And again, this particular quote is from another reading that we didn't get to from this semester, but I'm hopeful that it is helpful in clarifying this concept for you all. And thinking about this idea of community, we can think about this idea of disciplinarity. So here, when we think about the disciplines that you will be going into, the disciplines are the communities in which you are going to be enculturated into, the communities that are going to help create an understanding of what are the communication practices that you will need to be a part of. So the community that you are entering has already kind of created this consensus of what are the proper communication channels and how does communication happen within those channels. So what are the forms, what are the functions, and how does communication happen? What are the genres that we're going to be using? So on a larger discourse level, a disciplinary genre speaks to the process by which members of a discipline shape, make distinct, and value its forms and practices of knowledge, creation, and communication. And these processes, in turn, are shaped by the history of those genres. So genres are stable for now forms of communication where the rules of how communication is enacted is established by the group, that's perpetuated by the users of the community, and then is used to kind of be able to create meaning because the group will already understand what the role and the function of those genres are. And again, just kind of reiterating here that it's through the discipline that you will create that sense of community that creates those understandings of what genres are. So just to kind of give a quick recap, genres are not just the form. Genres are the function, and within that situation, what are the rules and expectations of communication? They're stabilized for now, and they are dictated both by the user and the receiver of information, the community that kind of establishes a consensus of what the role that's going to play. And that community and establishing the role of what the communication and rules will be happens in a variety of nuanced ways. Just like I said, a tweet. When I think of a tweet, when you think of a tweet, when we think of tweets, we kind of have a general understanding, but no one taught us in a class where those understandings come from, right? Like the community was shaped in different ways than in a classroom. Just like in that same way, when you enter a discipline or when you enter a workforce, how that group has established its forms of communication, what genres they're going to enact, what the role of those genres are, and what their purposes are going to be, is going to be shaped by that community, and you will learn what those are as you navigate that space. So that's the role, or that is what a genre is. All right, and I have some notes here that kind of get into the later part of the reading that are talking about multimodality, writing as performative, how texts get their meanings from other texts, and I'll post these for you all so that you can review them on your own time. I just wanted to give you all an in-depth view of what a genre is, as most of the questions, again, came from that. And getting into concept 3, I just wanted to kind of touch on what is an ideology. An ideology is a system of ideas and beliefs that together constitute a comprehensive worldview. Ideologies are formed and sustained by a variety of factors, including religion, economics, cultural myths, language, systems of law, and schooling. And our cultural and ideology is going to come out in our writing. And thinking again about how is it that we are being shaped to communicate, how is it that we're being shaped to respond to certain situations is going to be influenced by our ideology and our cultural milieu or our cultural background. And this is really getting at the concept that whenever we are writing, we are expressing our worldview. And so writing inherently is ideological. How we frame certain situations, how we interpret or view certain situations is going to be framed by our cultural and ideological frames or lenses. The last thing I wanted to touch on in this video is writing provides a representation of ideologies and identities. So writing provides a means whereby identities are discovered and constituted, yet those are never clear-cut. We carry many identities, choosing to foreground one or some over others depending on the context, the audience, and the rhetorical task at hand. Again, Villanueva has a really great example of this in his section of the text, where he states that when he is writing for different purposes, like if he's writing to the school board, he might position himself as a parent. When he's writing to a student, he might position himself as a professor. If he's writing for a grant, he's going to position himself as a professor of rhetoric and writing studies. And so the situation is going to foreground or help influence what ideology and what identity we're going to foreground in that situation. So to kind of conclude, both concept number 3 as well as concept number 2 are really highlighting the essential role that situations play within our writing within our composing practices. Situation and audience are going to have a large role in what it is and how it is that we go about communicating. But genre specifically we think about the rhetorical situation triangle. Genre is how the writer gets their message across to their reader to establish their purpose. And how that communication happens, how that communication is transferred, is the genre. But the genre is going to be shaped by the context, the culture, and the situation in which the communication is occurring. And the writer is going to have their previous experiences, both of their audience as well as what they're trying to get their point across, what they're trying to do, that's going to shape which genre and what rules they follow for that genre that they're going to use in that moment. All right, so that's it for this week. Again, you all are continuing to do excellent work on the discussions post. I just wanted to announce, and if you all have any questions from watching this video or any further questions on concepts from the readings that I did not touch upon, please feel free to email me, send me your questions. We can set up a time to chat. We can have virtual office hours. You can just send me an email and we'll set up an appointment. If not, continue to do the good work that you have been. We have more readings and discussions posts due for next week. And again, if you have questions, please put them in your discussions post so that way I can use them to kind of formulate my recap videos for the week. All right, everyone, till next time. Take care.